Wow, the blackboard actually looks really, or the whiteboard looks really good with no lights, actually.
Oh,
Yeah. I don't know, the other way needs to go.
Really? I haven't been here in 4 years. If I did it, it just stops at a certain point and then just right now. I wish I could go. I don't know, my hair did for a really long time. It took me 12. Kids. Started growing out here.
Not really.
Oh, they grow more. No, here, after that. That's common. So why? Sorry. Like we're trying to share my mommy. Definitely not darker. Yeah. And my hair is very saggy. No, we didn't. That's how I have always felt. And suddenly, it's true.
It's here.
Yeah.
It's here.
What kind of tea is it?
Black tea. Real black tea.
What kind of black tea?
What do you mean?
The name?
In English, it's called pagoda.
Pagoda?
Yeah.
That's from Star Wars.
It's not too much.
I think that's good. Oh, Dagobah system, yeah. The kettle there. I don't know if I love that open flame in here, but the kettle is from this guy named Peter Kuo, who's out of Taiwan. He like hand makes all these beautiful pieces, Peter Kuo, and then this brazier thing and these bowls are also made in Taiwan. Yeah.
So are you going to have these on Zoom to buy?
Yeah, they'll be available. The recordings on Zoom as well. Okay, let me 7 o'clock. Let's get the Zoom rolling.
Good to go back and listen to the.
Yeah, you're welcome to.
Is that an empty spot right there?
Yeah. This person. So this is. Sorry, science, man.
Wait.
Yeah. Oh, did he text you? Yeah, is it gonna be fun for me? Yeah.
Because I know
They're finally just
it might be the same person.
Yeah. He's like, can you do this? No. I can do this, yes, can you do this? No. I can do this. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not, because he didn't like respond to me, so I didn't know if we were like interested or not.
She had been like, and she'd been so.
Oh, good.
I'm like really anxious to talk to her because
I'm glad that worked.
well, her son.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. I can tell that too. Well, you know what? I'm just big with astrologer. With a 2022.
So I'll tell you this really quick.
Mhm. Sure.
I had a dream yesterday morning. Like, and it was like, I woke up and I
Son is
in
in 22 right now.
I was trying to bring the own woods to my body. And
Ah,
there was someone else there with me and I was doing all of these things, but I knew I needed more wood.
wow.
And I woke up and it was just like, I knew I was doing that. And I then Stephanie told me, this is what wood does. I really did.
Ah,
Anyways, it was just
interesting.
Kind of like the story.
Yeah, we'll kind of cover that a little bit today. Hopefully we'll have the chance to do a little exercise where we go through the 5 elements and kind of like how they show up. And so and then the next class that we have is specifically going deep into the wood element.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Staring at them.
I thought, well, that's pretty significant.
Mhm. That is.
We need that, but I don't know what the heck I was doing to bring it in.
Just open, it just came in, huh? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
This person. That's like one of those things where it's probably not going to be more than soccer. They go out in like July.
We should do it.
Okay, this is always the thing with this tea is like it's hard to like this is what we I don't know why I did the same thing, made the same mistake, but you really need to really boil it to actually get it. You know, it's like this is like a tiny layer of it. Let's do it. Let's try the boiled tea, actually. Good, grab the kettle, maybe grab the more of that, more of the tea itself. Let's put all this into the kettle. Try it out.
I try to read
So,
That's such a cool.
You're gonna go so hot.
I was going to that one, but I started going to Purify. Yeah. Yeah, I'm liking that one because they do more around with the L.C. which that's why. So,
Well, if you ever go.
Okay.
you ready to?
Yeah, I think so.
I have a question of people. So they can make it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have the Zoom
In the opposite lab.
recording available.
That's not standing and putting the position so much, right?
Well, here is Jane. She was planning to come, and then tonight her husband told her he's leaving in the morning for
Yeah.
to go to Poland to
Mhm.
shuttle refugees.
Wow.
She was like, I think
Wow.
I'll stay home tonight.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay. Cast. Oh, that's a typo.
It's hard to do on this. Oh, no, go ahead.
she was sending like meditations and love to the
Okay.
refugees and
Yeah.
stuff. And then he made a bigger commitment. I was like,
That's a big one.
Is it a hot one? Really?
hey, I think we're gonna get started tonight. Thanks again to Seth for the commitment and time that he puts into these classes. They've been great and really intensive, and really appreciate your time investment. So
Thank you.
super interesting for all of us. There are some people who might be new on the Zoom, so I'll just briefly introduce Seth. He's been in practice as acupuncturist for about 8 years and has a master's degree in Oriental medicine. He's been on the faculty at 2 universities back east and studied in Taiwan for a year under Dr. Lee and practiced at a clinic there. Recently he sold his practice in Boise and is now practicing down here. So if you have anything you'd like tuned up, contact him. Sure.
Do my best.
Yeah. Anyway, he's been working on me and it's great. Today he did some gua sha on my back. I have a really, really cool like dragonfly shape. It's just like, wow, that's like,
Yeah, it is a dragonfly shape.
yeah, it's so cool.
Okay, we ready to get started? Yeah, you can go. I'm just gonna start with just a brief little silence meditation. Just close your eyes. Just take some deep, slow breaths into your belly. And then slowly exhale as slow as you can. And then just repeat that belly breathing, slow inhalation into your belly. You feel it rising. And then slow exhalation, you feel the belly retreating. You can just do that at your own pace. And just tapping into observing that stillness and silence within ourselves and outside of ourselves. That stillness, that silence, that peace, it's always available. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes, or you don't have to. So the water element of the 5 elements, Chinese medicine, the water element is the stillness, it is the silence, it is the darkness, it is the yin of yin. It's the winter time, it's the dark of the night. This is a quality of nature that's within ourselves and within this earth that we're a part of. So as I said last time, when we introduced the 5 elements, that the word elements is really maybe not the best word to use for these states of nature. Better word would be a phase, 5 phases, or 5 frequencies, or 5 movements. Wuxing means 5 movements, not elements. That's kind of a mistranslation, but it's stuck. So we use elements, but elements kind of sounds like, kind of a dead thing or just a material substance. Really not that. It's a frequency. It's a phase. It's a movement of life. It's a season of life. And so last class, we did a bit of an overview of the 5 phases. And this class, we're going to go more depth into the water elements. And we're starting with the water. We could be starting with any of the 5 elements. But I like to start with the water because the water is this primordial mystery, the darkness, the dark depths of the universe from which we emerge and from which we return. So for me, I mean, it could very well be the last element that we go to in the terms of the cycles of life. Is associated with old age, actually, the water element. But it could also be associated just as easily with the, gestation period, right? That time of the deep water. So we could easily start with wood. We could start with wood because wood is birth, wood is creation, right? That makes sense. We could start with wood. We could start with fire because fire is associated with the heart, which is the empress of the body. We could start with fire. We could start with earth because earth is at the center of all things. Remember last week we drew 2 different versions of the 5 elements. We have the Wuxing cycle, but there's another version where we have the 4 cardinal directions, with water being associated with the north, wood being associated with the east, fire being associated with the south, metal being associated with the west, and earth being at the center. So earth being at the center of all things, we could easily start with earth element, right, as the most important element, or the basis of all. We could easily start with metal as well. Metal is associated with the lungs. Lung is responsible for the first breath of life. And indeed, with the channel sequence of acupuncture, the first point that we start with is the lungs. The breath is the most essential part of life. That's the beginning. When we are born, first thing we do is take that first breath of life. So we could easily start with the lungs and with the metal elements. But we're choosing to start with the water elements. As I said, water is associated with the great mystery of life. It's associated with their potential energy. In the winter time, all of the energy goes internal. It doesn't disappear. It might seem like it's like a dead time, but it's not a dead time. It's just that all this energy goes inward into potential energy, right? Everything's gathering until then in the springtime, everything bursts forth. That transformation from water into wood is that represents this transformation from potential into kinetic energy. And so just thinking about that for a moment, if we don't have a long enough winter period, we're not really going to have full growth because we need that period of time where we're gathering that potential energy. Otherwise, there won't be enough of it to transform into kinetic. And so that can have ramifications in our life and in nature. So we talked about last time, as each element has sort of a lesson to teach us, many lessons, but one core lesson we can look at is the transformation of the fear, in the case of water, the pathological emotion, the transformation of the pathological emotion into the virtue of that element. And so that's something for a water constitution, someone for whom this is their kind of sticking point, this is their inner nature, is the water element. It's going to be working on this transformation from pathological state of fear. And we'll look more into what does that exactly mean, fear, how does that show up in the body, transformation of fear into faith or into wisdom. We have both of these words being associated with the water virtue. So I'll just read a little something about the transformation of fear into wisdom. So the virtue associated with the water element is wisdom. Some of the ways in which wisdom may harmonize the life issues of a water type are listed in figure 9.3. The heart, Shen, in illuminating our depths, can only ever penetrate to a certain limited depth. But what lies beyond the depth of our awareness, what lies beyond the depth of our intuition, these are the unknown aspects of life and of the self that reside in the primordial realms of being and in the subconscious and in the unconscious. Fear is the emotion that arises in the face of the unknown. Okay, so that's kind of a key fact of the water element, is that fear is what arises in the face of the unknown. The sage, through the clever utilization of resources and a focused will, so through focusing the resources in a particular way, and with a certain focused will spend their lifetime cultivating wisdom. Wisdom is the virtue that empowers us to stand firmly in the face of that unknown and chart a steady course through uncertain waters. Okay, I'll read that sentence again. Wisdom. Wisdom is the virtue that empowers us to stand firmly in the face of the unknown and chart a steady course through uncertain waters. Right? In a certain fundamental way, life is unknown. Our path is unknown. Our death is unknown. What happens beyond death is unknown, even though we may have some idea of that or some vision or some belief. Fundamentally, that's the unknown, that represents the unknown. So this wisdom is what empowers us to take right action in the world in an instinctive way. And the way that we take that action is largely governed by the innate knowing in our primordial self, which lies beneath the reach of conscious knowing. Okay, so it's kind of philosophical, but what he's saying here, this guy Lonnie Jarrett, he's saying that, you know, while there is this unknown aspect, there is also this instinct knowing that we have, this primordial knowing that allows us to act from that place beyond the reach of conscious knowing, right? So it's not a conscious awareness, but it's this deep knowing. Kind of paradox, the knowing with the unknown. And so the sage in old age stares into the unknown, which toward the end of life presents inevitably as death. It is wisdom that empowers the sage to make this final journey in a conscious way that is not presided over by fear. So, you know, in a certain way, fear can show up in many different ways, but we can look at the kind of underlying fear. The fundamental fear is fear of death, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of death. So the sage aligns his or her will with the will of heaven, accepts the inevitable, and gracefully follows the flow of Tao wherever it may lead. The sage aligns her will with the will of heaven, accepts the inevitable, and gracefully follows the flow of Tao wherever it may lead. Any questions or thoughts so far?
Yes, this is really probably gonna be a lame one.
No.
I've only done one of these
Uh-huh.
courses. So
Mhm.
what do you mean by sage?
Yeah, so the sage, this is just a word that means sort of like the model human, maybe, that we can look at. And the sage is kind of the master of life. It's not a real person, it's just sort of this concept of mastery. So this is always, in Chinese thought, whenever they say the sage does this, this is sort of like how we want to model our behavior after the sage. It's like the great person, the person who is one with the way, the Tao, the person who is one with the way. Like I said, the person who is one with God, the person who is one with the inner nature of things. So that's the sage. That's kind of like represents a high level of being. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have extraordinary powers or like that they're a prophet or anything like that. It's just that they're cultivated human. They're a cultivated human who's close to the way, close to the inner nature of all things. That's a good question.
I like that because that invites each of us into that.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's not like some impossible person who has magical powers. It's not that. It's just someone who studies in Taoist perspective, someone who studies the way, someone who studies the Tao so deeply that it's infused with their being, and they're one with the Tao. They move through life fluidly, and there's no opposition. That's not to say they're pushover or anything like that. No, when there's a time to act or time to fight or it's just knowing when all those right times are and acting without inner conflict, without any kind of friction, which generates stagnation or generates problems, right? Because if all the chi flows smoothly, there's no disease. So last time we had the 5-phase correspondence sheet with all the different correspondences of the 5 elements. I don't know if any of you guys have that or still remember that. If you have it, you can share it with those around you. But through these different correspondences, right, where we have the water element associated with the winter season, water element associated with actually, I'm going to write these things on the board because probably you guys don't have it necessarily from last week. So we look at these correspondences. At the water elements. So we can look at the season of winter. Can look at the color of black or blue. The sound associated with the water element is a groan. The smell being putrid, and we're not going to necessarily understand all of these or how to identify them today, maybe a little bit. The emotion being, as we said, fear. The virtue being wisdom. Sometimes translated as faith. The gift being deep listening. Right, pure receptivity. Water is also associated with as far as the sensory organ, associated with the ears. Each of the 5 is associated with one of the 5 senses. Associated with the direction of the north. Climactic factor is cold. The time of life would be the womb or death, as I said. The taste, and there's so many correspondences. We could go through a ton of different correspondences. The type of grain that is associated with, the animal that is associated with. There's so many. The taste is associated with salty. The tissue that it's associated with is the bones. The sense is hearing, as we said, ears, sense organ, and the sense associated with hearing. And the spirit of the water is called the zhi in Chinese, which means like the will to life. The organs that is associated with are the kidney and the bladder. So all of these aspects have the kind of the same frequency. They're all expressions of the water element, or we could say they're all expressions of the winter time, or we could say they're all expressions of the north. By the way, in this class, we're going to do sort of like the first half is going to be lecture, this lecture, and then the second half is going to be a bit more experiential. I don't know if it'll be totally 50-50, but that's the idea.
As far as a little bit wisdom, I think kind of associated wisdom with metal, but maybe metal is something comparable.
Yeah, metal is more, the virtue of metal is more like honor. Metal is like doing the right thing.
Yeah.
It's like how to act in the society that's like the right way. So metal is associated with this kind of like heavenly connection of like, this is what's right. Whereas, water is also associated with what's right, but it's more like, it's this kind of receptivity, this inner knowing. It's not so much, about honoring culture, or honoring the past or anything like that. Metal is this very, honoring tradition, honoring, nature, and it can be out of balance. Yeah, it can definitely be. But out of balance, the metal can be rigid. But the water element represents more of this kind of surrender. It's this surrender quality. And last time we mentioned that there's sort of in terms of this wisdom or this trust, we can look at sort of like a yin aspect and a yang aspect. So even though water is like the yin element, within that element, there's the yin aspect and there's the yang aspect. There's the yin organ, the kidneys, and the yang organ, the bladder. And the yin trust or the yin wisdom is being able to do nothing, being able to surrender, being able to trust, right? Like there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to relax, like I'm just going to float. That's the yin aspect. But then there's also yang aspect of trust, or yang aspect of wisdom is knowing to do it, knowing that I can do it, knowing that I have the strength and fortitude to do this thing, to carry out my destiny. Water element is associated with our destiny, really, and enacting that. And so fulfilling our destiny requires a combination of surrender and action, right? We can't just be, it's not like being in total surrender is going to get us there. And that, unless that's our curriculum, is just to be total, total surrender. But also on the other hand, our curriculum is not just to be always acting, right? We need to have also, unless that's our curriculum, unless that is what this lifetime is about, we can't really say someone else's curriculum, right? But we have this yin aspect and this yang aspect. So the yin aspect being, the wisdom to do nothing and to trust, to surrender, and the yang aspect being to know that I can do it, that I can push forward. The this drive, it's like the will to life, primordial will to life that all beings have. All beings want to survive. They don't want to die, right? I mean, if you want to die, that's sort of like, that's pathology, right? So that will to life, and if someone has a weak will to life, that would probably be a water element issue. If they have a weak will, I don't even want to live. It's just this kind of like lifeless quality. And we want to strengthen their will to life. We want to add kidney yang to give them this zest and vitality for life. That's kidney yang deficiency. Kidney yin deficiency, on the other hand, would be like, I can't relax. I don't feel, I can't settle like this. We can't settle deeply into ourself, into the moment. That's the kidney yin deficiency. So again, kidney yin is being able to surrender, the yin aspect of water, being able to surrender, let go, trust, flow and follow. The yang aspect is taking action. We actually need both. the yang aspect being like, you know, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take action, or I'm going to run, or I'm going to, right? Like we can make it if we run. Like Bruce Springsteen says, the boss says, Bruce Springsteen, we can make it if we run. That's like a water element. It's like, okay, well, I gotta go. Like I gotta run. That's like survival. Like I gotta know when to, you know, when to. No, I'm not gonna say that, but yeah, know when to act. I was gonna say know when to hold him and know when to fold him, but that's not. I don't know if that's really. But there is. I mean, that is actually applicable, because it's like water element is about resources, right? Knowing when to hold, to gather your resources, and know when to surrender, or know when to run away, or, you know, that resource part is actually important with the water element. I'm going to read another little passage on that. The life thesis of water. So the life thesis of water, according to Latin Jarrett. Well, he explains that in the moment that we lose original nature, or that we lose oneness, right? We talked about last time how some believe that at a certain point, like a child has a sort of some incident that sets them off on a certain track, right? They're one with everything. They're all flowing through all the emotions very smoothly, and then there's something that happens that they get caught on a certain like life theme that comes up again and again. This inner voice that keeps coming up again and again. A life theme is established that determines how we as individuals will interpret life. It's like a lens that we have. According to 5-element theory, we each have a lens of a particular element, our constitution. That's sort of like our lens, our way of seeing the world through that lens. That's how we interpret life, and subsequently how we come to embody our interpretations as pathology. This theme is dictated by our constitutional type, and it corresponds, in essence, to a thesis about our inner nature and about the nature of life itself. This thesis represents a distortion by our minds of one or more inborn virtues that lie buried in our hearts. It's a distortion of virtue, these pathological lies, this life thesis or life theme. The key life themes for the water constitution involve utilizing resources and bringing potential into the world in a way that cultivates the virtue of wisdom. Okay, so acting in the world, bringing our potential out into the world in a way that cultivates our virtue, the virtue of wisdom specifically. If our habitual reaction to the presence of fear obscures our access to wisdom, then our life theme is distorted into a thesis that compromises our balanced relationship to resources in every aspect of being. So this part of resources, money, is the most externalized concrete example in our society of resource in life. So patients' relationship to money and financial security may serve as a metaphor for their relationship with their expenditure of their reserves. Okay, so why is money kind of important with the water element? Because water has to do with our resources, our internal resources, our internal reserves. The kidney is kind of like the battery or the generator that contains all of our vitality, our vital essence. And so that can show up, within us of either kind of being like reckless, right, with our resources, burning the candle at both ends, where we start to burn into our jing, our essence, excess activity, sexual activity specifically, but any kind of excess activity, lack of sleep, right? Not doing the things that actually replenish, or it's actually not really even replenishing, because there's this concept that basically we have this sort of like life force, and the more we tap into, we're kind of like burning it up. There's different ideas of whether we can even replenish that, or whether we can simply stop ourselves from leaking out all, because if we could replenish it, we could live forever, right? I mean, like the aging is basically this, using up of this essence. So some people say, well, with Qigong practice, you can actually build back up your essence. Some people say, no, you can just like kind of consolidate it and make things flow smoothly. There's different ideas about that essence. And so our life's thesis may have as its theme, there could be either a quality of excess or deficiency, like I'm kind of speaking to a little bit. The archetype theme for water constitution that reflects the excess could be stated as, my inner purpose is so compelling that it must be manifested continually, regardless of the consequences to anything or anyone in the way. This is like an excess will. Excess will. Ambition is actually the water element. You really like ambition, like it kind of seems like wood because it's activity, but it's this drive, this life force, and this wanting to like enact our destiny, and just like this very strong drive. Water is actually the most powerful element, even though it's the slow moving, but it's this slow dedication. That's the water element, this slow dedication, putting in the work every day, again and again and again. And so if that's in a more deficient state, it could be something like showing up as like, I'm impotent to affect change in the world. Or what happens to me is a matter of fate. Like basically I'm nothing, I can't do anything. A lack of will. This is kind of talking about this part, will, the power of water, right? So excess will or deficient will. Another way we can look at the life theme of water, or the pathological lie, these voices. Last time we talked about this, where for each in pathology, there can be this sort of recurrent story, or this inner voice that keeps telling us certain things. So in like modern psychology, I like to talk about like inner child work, right? And so often there's this kind of like inner voice that's telling us certain things, and there's sort of like themes that keep coming up again and again. But the thing is that this voice is, when you look at it and where it's coming from, it's actually not coming from you. Or is it coming from you? That's the question that you need to ask when you're discerning some kind of thing. It's like, is this voice coming from within myself, or is it some sort of imprint? Is it some sort of hitchhiker, or is it some sort of story, right? That's not coming from your inner self. And so it's important to kind of suss out these distinctions of these voices, right? Like which voice is me and which voice is the hitchhiker. Because we can have the voice of the hitchhiker or the pathological lie, and then we could have sort of the reaction to that voice, but neither one of those are really us. Then there's also the voice of one's own heart. So we need to get clear about those inner voices in order to heal. It's sort of like in 5-element acupuncture, before working with the energy of the body, before working with the energy of the meridians, we want to clear out any excess or evil chi. There's sort of like depossession treatments or releasing treatments that we can do, because we want to make sure we get rid of all those voices that are not you before we work on cultivating the virtue. And remember that the heart, which is the empress of the body, the heart is beyond all of these experiences and voices. The heart is an empty vessel. Okay. Kylie, do you have that bowl of mine? Do I have it? Do you have it? And so let's just look at a few of these different aspects of water, a few of these different correspondences. So water is associated with the direction of the north. The north, the character for the north, Chinese character, it shows the turning of one's back. It shows a negation, or like sort of an exile, place of exile. The north is considered a place of exile, a place to retreat, a place to turn back on life and to go inward. That's the element of the north. So the trigram of water is one yang line within two yin lines. That's the trigram of water. So trigrams are basically representation of different states of nature. So we have like, we can either look at a yin line or a yang line. And if we construct these in certain ways, it's sort of like a representation of different states of nature. If we put two trigrams on top of each other, we create a hexagram, or 6 lines. And this forms the basis of 2 times 2 times 2, 2 to the 6th power is 64. So there's 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. So the I Ching, or the Book of Changes, lays out these 64 hexagrams as different states of nature. So some people would kind of like look to this as for guidance of maybe they would ask a question. We will going to probably do a future class on the I Ching. They would look to this book as an oracle, and kind of like people use the tarot a lot of times nowadays in the West. They would ask it a question and sort of get an answer back of like, this is sort of the state of nature that is happening right now, and it also contains within it a suggestion of how to orient yourself within that state of nature. But anyway, this is the trigram of water, which is one yang line within two yin lines. So this trigram also suggests to us a little bit about the nature of water. Even though it's the most yin element, it actually is it has yang within yin. And so like remember the Taiji symbol. Where we have the yin within yang, or the yang within yin. This is an important concept. So when we go into the most yin part, there is also yang within that. And so when we look at the kidneys, for example, which is the organ associated with the water, the kidneys, because it's a water element, is associated with cold, right? As we're saying, water element is cold, is north. So kidney is associated with the cold of the north. But there's another aspect to kidneys. If we look at from the 6th stage perspective, and we're not going to, I'm just mentioning this, you're not going to understand it, that's okay. But from the 6th stage perspective, kidney is considered a Shao Yin, which is associated with fire. Kidney and heart are paired. Kidney and heart are fire organs in this other way of looking at things. So we have this, as far as the kidneys, is associated with cold and also associated with fire. And so again, we're looking into the yin aspect and the yang aspect of water. And so in the, what's called the Nanjing, or the Difficult Questions, which is a book from about 500 AD, one of these difficult questions, it's asked, okay, so like all of these organs, we have one of them, but the kidneys, there's two. Like, what's up with that? Why is there two? And the answer is very interesting. The answer is, oh, no, actually there's only one kidney, which is the left kidney. That's the true kidney. The right kidney is the Mingmen. It's like, it's more of a symbolic answer, pointing to these two different aspects of water, these two different aspects of the kidneys, where we have the yin aspect, or the Jing. So it's said based on that, and this is sort of symbolic as well, but it's said based on that, that the left kidney is where the Jing is stored. That's where the essence is stored, in the left kidney. In the right kidney, which is the yang one, the right kidney is where the Jing Shen is stored. Jing Shen. So the right kidney is where the Jing Shen is stored. Probably those online can't really read that. Sorry, I won't use the red again, but the Jing Shen is stored in the right kidney. So this is where the water and fire alchemical process is happening. This is about the actualizing of potential, whereas this left kidney, this concept of the left kidney being where the Jing is stored, and the right kidney being where we actualize that potential, where the fire within water is. And this interaction between the left and right kidney is what alchemizes our essence, our Jing, our Yuan Qi. Yuan Qi is the Qi aspect of that essence. So this water symbolizes this kind of double power of yin within yang. So those who isn't this tea? It looks so much different. Now it's like dark after it's boiled. This kidneys, there's a whole school of thought, school of Chinese medicine, predicated on the kidneys or the water elements. Different schools of thought. And so there is this Dr. Zhu Shi. Probably another 20 minutes. We're going to talk. I'm going to talk. You guys can interrupt me too, but either way is good.
Something about how they, you mentioned the mainland.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a sec.
There's a little bit more there. Should I take that?
You can leave it. Okay. So we have these two schools of Chinese medicine associated with the water element. There's probably more, but these are the two main ones. Zhu Shi. Which is basically the water school, the nourish the kidney school, but more so the nourish the yin, nourish the kidney yin, nourish the yin. And then we have this other school, which is from the Ming Dynasty, which is about the year 1500. And these ideas were floating around before them, but this is when it was kind of systematized. Where we have Zhang Jingyue. And he has the Mingmen school, which is the kidney yang school. So we have a lot of herbal formulas coming out of both of these schools. So this, Zhu Shi, the first one, this kind of kidney yin school, basically believes that, throughout all of our life experience, the yin burns up, being kind of like our resources, our essence. Our resources burn up. So we need to basically chill out. Like basically we need to relax. And then that's going to help to preserve our resources. If we're just always acting, if we're always yang all the time, we're going to burn up our resources, our fluids, our essence. And so we need to relax and we need to chill. That's the nourish the yin school in a nutshell. And so we have formulas and herbs that are prioritized, that are treasured, that are revered in the nourish the yin. So most notably, this herb called, I'll just write it down here. This herb called Shuji Huang, which is Romania roots. Romania roots. It's a very dark, sticky, fluid generating, essence replenishing herb. And then on the other hand, Zhang Jingyue in the Mingmen school said that no, like yang is life force. If we're not acting, if our yang, if our vitality is gone, that's when we die. We actually need vitality. What's a life if we're not going to be taking action, right? So we have the Mingmen school, and I'll go into what the Mingmen is exactly in a minute. The Mingmen school represented by this herb, which is revered, treasured, and worshipped, called Futsa, which is aconite root. So this is a kidney yang tonic. So according to this school, yang is never excessive. Yang can never be excessive, but yin can be deficient. But if we build the yang and consolidate the yang, then the yin will consolidate as well. So we're assisting the yin by means of the yang. Because what is yin if it can't be transformed? Yang represents transformation. So these guys will kind of like laugh at these guys because they're giving these people such these yin herbs that are just kind of, generating fluids and they're like, this is creating stagnation. We need to actually have some yang qi to actually transform it and do something with it. And so the point of view of this school, the Mingmen school, this herb futsa actually returns the kidney yang to its source, returns the kidney yang to Mingmen, which is not an idea that other herbalists would use. They would be very cautious of using this really hot, really yang invigorating herb. But someone from the Mingmen school, which is later called the Fire God School, they will use routinely over 100 grams of futsa in one day, which is kind of crazy. But for really chronic diseases, we need to really mobilize this very deep vitality. Okay, so the Mingmen. First of all, we can look at the terms. Mingmen. Ming basically means our destiny. This is the type of destiny basically that's called within us of what we need to enact in the world. This decree by which heaven calls the human into being, and this destiny that determines our fate. And then men, this term men, in Chinese looks like that, is a gate or a door. Kind of looks like the saloon doors, like the old saloon doors that like kind of swing out. So that's men. This gate. Saloon doors. And so this door of Mingmen goes out, it swings out, so that this vitality, this kidney yang, can distribute throughout the body. Because this is the basis of all physiological functioning in the body. All physiological functioning of the body comes from, originally, this kidney yang. It's like the pilot light of the body, the kidney yang, pilot light of the body. And so, from this school, is like if we have a strong pilot light, that's life. If we put too much yin, that's actually going to exhaust our pilot light. That's going to create disease, according to these guys, the kidney yang school, because that pilot that represents life. So why would you want to add all this yin to like basically put a wet blanket on life? Kidney yang school.
How do you reconcile those two schools?
I'm more on this side, kidney yang side, but they both have their benefit. But I see this being really effective in treating really chronic, difficult diseases as well. And in a certain way, when we're talking about life is yang.
So the Mingmen, isn't the Mingmen right?
Right. So the Mingmen, the anatomical location of the Mingmen is sort of like the anatomical location of this metaphysical idea, this idea of the gate of destiny, that's what was translated as kind of like the gate of destiny, is located physically between the L2 and L3 vertebrae. That point is called Mingmen. But basically that's in the space in between the two kidneys. That's the physical representation of this concept of Mingmen, or the gate of destiny. So for example, if we have a patient who is so kidney yang deficient, because remember we were talking about someone who's like, oh, I can't take action in the world, I don't even know what's my purpose in life. We can needle this Mingmen to stoke the fire within them or we can do moxa on this point to revitalize their deep spirit, kidney yang.
So it's between the two kidneys back there. That's why it's between.
That's what the Mingmen symbolizes. Level with the belly button. Yeah, totally. So if we follow the belly button all the way around, that would be the Mingmen.
What's the significance of it being in between the two kidneys? That's like the pilot light one?
Well, it's really kind of the interaction of the two kidneys, because remember we were saying the left kidney being the kidney yin, right kidney being kidney yang, and then this movement between the two that moving qi between the kidneys is called dong qi, kind of a funny name. Dong qi, the moving kidney between the moving qi between the two kidneys, which is like a thick, heavy, strong qi. And that qi is then distributed throughout the body from the Mingmen up to all the other organs. The mechanism that transports this and this is now called yuan qi. When it goes from the kidneys up through the rest of the body, it's called yuan qi. The mechanism that transports that is called the sanjiao, the triple warmer. So the sanjiao kind of represents this transportation function. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like if somebody has like one kidney that's failing,
Mm-hmm.
is that like kind of related to like what might be going on
Well,
with like
there's different schools of thought about this. Some would say that this kind of left kidney is this, right kidney is that, is more of like sort of a metaphor, than anything. But then others would take it more literally. It's almost like, stories from the Bible. It's like there's the literalist people interpretation, and then there's those who say it's a metaphor. So there's both. There's kind of like both schools of thought, with that, of like, what does that mean? So I can't answer that, but there's kind of both schools of thought on that.
yeah, donate a kidney, donate your right one.
Donate your right one. Well, I don't know, but maybe, yeah, because your left one is like your deep resources and your inner nature. But the right one is pretty important too. I don't know. But if you donate one, then the other one will just kind of pick up the slack, right? If they both kind of contain both. But I would bet that like organ donation in China is not as common as in the United States, because people probably are really into their organs in a deeper way. I mean, in modern culture, a lot of these ideas are really like kind of lost, but there's an imprint of them still. Any other questions? I have a little bit more I want to talk about.
You said the yuan qi is like the pilot light. What you said?
That's like, I'm kind of saying that's the Mingmen.
Oh, okay. And then
Or the kidney yang.
When you're referring to the kidneys, is that including the adrenals on top, or is it?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, the adrenals are, yes, it basically, short answer, yes. Adrenals are really also associated with kidney yang, in particular, kidney yang.
I've heard that in Western medicine, like, adrenals aren't really a thing.
Aren't so important or something.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that, or Kylie?
I don't know.
Yeah,
yeah, that like adrenal fatigue
isn't a thing, right? Adrenal fatigue is not real. Leaky gut is not real. Yeah, I mean, they're sort of like a little bit non-specific syndromes. Adrenal fatigue, yeah, in Western medicine, they have a difficulty when things are now a specific pathway or one specific mechanism. So when we have these kind of syndromes, which is a collection of symptoms, that can take a long time to be recognized until the actual mechanism, one or two or three, is identified of what's actually happening. And so we have these kind of phenomena that we haven't yet caught up to it in terms of being recognized on a wide scale. Like, I mean, just like can look at like chronic Lyme disease as an example. For many, many years, it's like there's no such thing as chronic Lyme disease, even though there's so many patients who have it. It's like, no, that doesn't exist. And then finally, when enough evidence, or whatever, there's other things at play there, politically or economically, but there is like, can take a long time for something to become recognized. Even if we can see the phenomena of like adrenal fatigue. And what adrenal fatigue is depleted water energy, right? It's like we're using all our kidney yang and or yin, can be both. And then we're totally depleted.
So it's either yin or yang?
Can be both, and it can probably be depending on your perspective. Some people be like, ooh, we need to nourish your kidney yin. Others would be like, oh no, we need to, or we need to do both. But it would be how it shows up clinically. there'll be a different presentation, kidney yin deficient versus kidney yang deficient presentation.
And are the adrenals like some type of organ or?
Yeah, they're basically a gland that sits on top of the kidneys.
A gland.
A gland that secretes adrenaline, which is this kind of, in Chinese medicine perspective, this kind of like survival, right? Adrenaline is secreted when we need to survive, right? Like that survival, that zhi. But we're like, many people are like drinking coffee every day, which coffee squeezes out adrenaline, right? Kind of activates that. That's why, like, people can get addicted to that feeling. It's not, not just coffee, but different things, kind of stimulants that activate our, system that really is activated when we see a tiger in the woods. That's when it should be, that's when it should be activated. But we're activating it every day because maybe we actually are not in alignment with our destiny and we're doing things that we won't want to do. So naturally we would just have like a, kidney deficiency about it, where we're like, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to do this. But then when we do this, we're like, okay, I have to do it. So it's a way to kind of cheat, I think, and to kind of squeeze out the life force that's and direct it in a way that maybe is not natural to direct it in.
Or to distract ourselves.
Exactly. Or to distract ourselves with stimulants because we don't want to go into that unknown or that stillness. Exactly.
Is that associated too with the emotions? Like if you're like spilling your emotions everywhere and then you're depleting your kidneys?
Yeah, it depends on the emotion. So for this one, it's kind of this state of sort of like fear or anxiety. If you're kind of like in this state of being always activated and kind of like in the state of fear activation, versus, because someone can be spilling their emotions from each of the 5 elements. Like if someone is spilling anger and frustration and they're exploding all the time, that would be a wood out of balance. If someone is spilling sympathy or taking care of other people or like, like that would be a earth spilling over, the earth issue. So it depends on emotion, on the emotion itself. If it's grief that can't be contained, that's just spilling over. That's a metal out of balance. Metal, yeah.
So what would water?
Fear. Yeah, so water would be fear, or this kind of like hypervigilance, preparedness. Yeah. And fear is different than worry. Worry is associated with the earth. And that's more of a sort of day-to-day rumination, like kind of like thinking about, I have to do this, I have to do that, or you just keep circular thinking. Earth is circular. So you just keep kind of like repeating the same things in your head or, out loud or whatever, kind of repetitive. Water is this kind of like deep, like things are not okay. Fear is like things are not okay. Like fundamentally, like, underlying, you feel like things aren't okay. That's water out of balance. Earth, you might be worrying also like, ooh, this isn't okay. Like, that's not okay, but it's more like this day-to-day stuff. But like water is more like on a fundamental level, like, I don't know if things are okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Things are not okay. Yeah, things are not okay. And so the virtue of it is faith, is like everything is okay. Everything is okay. That's the virtue of faith or wisdom. Okay.
Yeah, and then I have to balance it with like, okay, there's a bigger picture here.
Uh-huh.
The world is like progressing towards some type of, whether it's a meltdown.
Right. It's doing what it's doing.
Take it to the next level
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
It's very easy to get caught in things are not okay, because that's kind of all the, like, we can observe that in a certain way, like we can observe that, like, in a way, things are not okay in a certain sense. And we have different interpretations of why things aren't okay, but many people think things are not okay. And what the water element virtue is like, being able to get underneath that, and like, even if things are not okay, it's okay. Yeah, because both are true. It's like what I said last time is like, don't let the facts get in the way of the truth, right? It's like there's certain facts, it's like, this is how things are, right? Those are facts, like, but don't let those facts get in the way of the truth being that things are okay. But also things aren't okay. That's the fact, right? Paradox. just say a word about this concept of the Jing essence. So the Chinese character for Jing is an exploding rice grain. Exploding grain of rice. So rice, rice is very important in Chinese culture, right? Because rice symbolizes basically human civilization, because once, we can domesticate plants, we have farming, that's all, then we have culture and society. Before a hunter-gatherer, and now rice basically symbolizes culture and life, essentially human life, organized life. And so the character for qi is a rice grain in a pot that's boiling with steam coming out. That's qi. And so Jing is this rice grain exploding with the character of clear and the character of emotion. And so this character indicates this metabolic process that's vital to life. Metabolic process that's taking place that's vital to life. So the character for Jing is actually the same character for sperm in Chinese. So the way you say sperm is Jing. So that's like this seed of life, right? Contains with it, and it has this explosive energy as well, right? This dynamic energy. That's the yang. Like it's the yin substance, but also the yang of the movement. In Chinese medicine perspective, menstrual blood, breast milk, and saliva, for example, saliva during qigong or during meditation is an important thing to focus on. These are all expressions or manifestations of Jing. Menstrual blood, breast milk, and saliva as well. But sperm is like pure Jing.
So all of those are the same symbol or the same character?
Only sperm is the same actual character that's used. Like the word Jing in Chinese also means sperm. But these substances of the menstrual blood, the breast milk, and saliva, they all have a piece of this Jing. They're all expressions of Jing, but they have other substances as well. They're mixed with other fluids. They're mixed with blood. They're mixed with other things.
What would the egg be?
The egg is also Jing. It's also Jing, and it's also an expression of Jing. But Chinese culture is what's the word? I don't know, patriarchal. So like the word Jing could just as easily be like also a word for egg, because that's the same expression of life. But that's more, if we want to break it down, of like the egg would be the yin expression of Jing, and the sperm would be the yang expression of Jing. But they both contain both as well. That's pretty much all that I wanted to cover on the lecture part. Any other questions? Cool.
What are the animals for water?
Oh yes, that reminds me of something that I wanted to say too. So this direction of the north, the water, has like two spirit animals. There can be other animals associated with it, because like the pig is associated with water as well. But we can look at these two spirit animals of the tortoise. The tortoise embodying this sense of retreat within oneself that we talked about, with the direction of the north being a turning away or retreat, being able to totally go inward. The tortoise, isolation, and also keeping of time. The tortoise had this idea of keeping of time, this kind of longevity. This kind of yin aspect of water. And the snake is also associated with the north and the water. The snake representing this kind of cleverness and action of the water element. Water element associated with cleverness and ability. They say skill and ability stem from it in the Neijing, in the text. Skill and ability stem from it, the kidneys. This is the kind of skill and ability that's over time. So there's kind of like ancient Chinese folklore. They believe that the snake and tortoise reproduced, because the snake and the tortoise go into a hole together. They actually sometimes sleep in the same holes. So there's this kind of like, metaphor, this belief that the snake and the tortoise reproduce. So there's this idea that all tortoises are female and all snakes are male, and they go in and they reproduce. They reproduce. So but basically what that symbolizes is that the yin and yang aspects of the kidneys, or the water element, where the tortoise is the yin aspect and the snake being the yang aspect. Okay, gonna take just like a minute break because I want to see if we can set up something on the projector, and then I'm also going to do a screen share here, but I'll just take like a minute or two. If anyone needs to go to the bathroom, now would be a good time. Oh, one second, and then we can. Okay, we're gonna start the Qigong movement in a second. Oh, this is Tiger. Oh, it's gonna switch. Thank you. Okay, so there's a style of Qigong that was a form of Qigong that was created by Chinese medicine doctor Hua, who was a very famous Chinese medicine doctor. He has a group of points named after him, which are points that go along the spine. They're called the Hua points that go on either side of the spine. He was also a doctor that was famous for doing basically surgery, also doing surgery at that time. And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, that he was at one point was the emperor's physician, and the emperor had a serious issue, brain condition, and his doctor Huato said that the only thing that we can do is surgery. That's what we need to do is surgery. And then they thought that that meant that he was trying to kill the emperor, because you want to chop open the head of the emperor, you're an infidel, and so then he was sentenced to death, and then the emperor died as well.
So
They executed this Dr. Huato, and then the emperor died anyway because he needed surgery. Okay, so he created this what are called the 5 animal frolics, 5 animals Qigong. And each of the 5 can be associated with the 5 phases or the 5 elements. And so this deer movement, not necessarily the deer energy, but there are certain ways that the deer energy is related to water, but this movement has a lot of kind of spinal movement that stimulates the spine and stimulates the kidneys. So I learned it a long time ago, but I haven't done it in a long time. So we're just going to follow along with her. So we can all stand up and kind of spread out, try to get a little bubble. Some people can, I don't know, maybe go up here. Ready? Okay. I need to connect with the, well, let's see. Yeah, I should connect with the speaker. I forgot about that part. Well, let's try. Let's just see if we can follow her. So there, maybe the balance of 0. So that can be, with Qigong, it's kind of clunky at first learning just the mechanics of the form, but then you do it enough and enough times that you can start to feel the energy flow in a certain way. But that's the,
I can actually feel the energy.
yeah, nice. So yeah, for me, I also felt the energy kind of in my spine, upper and lower spine, moving through the spine with all these kind of almost like cat-cow, like right, the spinal movement. Okay.
So is the deer associated with water?
Not specifically. I think it's just more in this movement, and the movements that they have. But in a way.
Oh, but I mean,
In this, yes, in this, yes. Okay. So the next part of the class is going to be a little bit different, where it's going to be a partnered exercise. It's going to be a partnered exercise, and I'll explain what to do in a minute. But we're going to partner off, and I would encourage you to partner with someone that you don't really know, don't know so much, or know like least. And so essentially what we're going to do here is each one of us is going to be the practitioner, and then each one of us is going to be the patient, so to speak. And so the practitioner is the one who's asking questions and who's holding space for the patient. Okay, so it's going to be a seated exercise. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to embody, the practitioner is going to embody and presence the water elements as best you can within yourself. So based on what we've talked about, and it's okay, you're just trying it out, you're doing as best. But as we're talking about this kind of deep stillness and power, right? So maybe one way to kind of activate this is we want to sit with our kidneys, pressed up against our chair. And if you need to get another chair, or maybe sit on the ground up against but with our kidneys, so we can actually feel our kidneys, we can feel the feet against the ground. Kidney 1, feet against the ground. We feel our kidneys against the seat to kind of activate this, and we feel very rooted, and we feel our inner power. It's deep energy. It's not like like we want to kind of settle in deep. We can settle into this presence within ourselves, this energetic within ourselves. Diagnostically, we can then offer that to someone else and then see how they respond. As the patient, you don't have to do anything. You just respond to the situations that are coming up, or respond to the question, or respond to what's going on. So as the practitioner, you're the one being very intentional and offering this energetic. And I'm going to explain more about what we're going to do. But that's the kind of breakdown, is that you're going to try to presence, as the practitioner, you embody this water element, or a stillness, strength, calmness, and then we offer that. And then you can start by like asking a question to the person. So, example of like a water question. We can think of anything from these correspondences that we have. We still have them on the other side. You can kind of think about any of these things: wisdom, fear, will. We can kind of ask any kind of earth or water questions, but one example might be something like this. So first I'm going to access that energy within myself. And the water element is not super personal. It's not like, hey, like tell me, it's not like that energy. That's fire. And it's not like, oh, hey, honey, like that's earth, right? It's not so personal. It's deep presence of the moment, right? So I access that within myself. So Kylie, can you tell me a little bit about what faith means to you? And you don't have to answer it, but that's an example of like a water question, or I could say, let's see. Jess, can you tell me about something that has a lot of fear, or like that's something that you're deeply afraid of in life? Like what is What is your deepest fear? I'm breaking character, but you don't have to answer right now. But these are examples of water questions. It doesn't like, in a way, the content doesn't even matter of what you ask. It can't, like, I mean, it can be about this stuff, but it can be something else, but it's the energy. It's actually the energy. So you can first, we'll partner up and we won't go immediately into the exercise. We're just going to try to presence the energy within ourselves, and then we'll go into the exercise. You can kind of think of a question in that time. And so, well, there's 6 of us. We can partner up and partner with someone that you maybe don't know so well. Yes. Go.
Okay.
Yeah, so you might need to move around. Okay, so now that we've introduced ourselves, let's just take a moment to go inward and access that water. Actually, no. Before we do that, while we're still in the introducing, one person's going to be A, one person's going to be B. Decide who's A and who's B. Okay, so now let's close our eyes and access this space within ourselves, feeling our kidneys, either feeling our kidneys or feeling them against something, but feeling the integrity of our spine from the bottom to the top, feeling our thighs or our feet firmly planted against the ground, feeling that sense of peace, strength, faith. And when we're ready, we can open our eyes. And whoever is B, you're going to be the practitioner. And so whenever you're ready, you can ask, and you're going to start by asking one question. Okay, and you don't even have to ask right away. You can take a moment to be more in stillness and see what comes out. And you're going to ask one question, then you're going to kind of follow the thread. If the thread kind of leads nowhere or something, you can come back to just the pure presence of that element. You can ask another question. But this is kind of what it means to be a practitioner, to hold space and to kind of like, you're wanting to gather what is the state of the water element within this person, and just see what you find out. And so whenever you're ready, you can, person B, go ahead. We're gonna have 7 minutes. Down. Yeah. What's that? If you run out of things to ask or talk about and you need some inspiration, these are just, I'm writing some kind of themes of water. These are things you can ask about. Okay, 15 seconds left before we switch. Finish this thread. And then whenever this thread ends, whenever you're ready, you're going to switch. So So you can switch whenever is natural.
Yeah. And so, and then also the piece of the right, a little bit of internally, like, but externally. Allowing my friends to trust to like this feels. Yeah. So that those are all like because I knew very I followed it or how people understand step yeah. I mean, understand where that was This little series is a small I'm still so it's nice to go back and for a while. I need this more. Oh, yeah, that's what I live in somebody else, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
They'll do the.
Yeah.
So you can kind of complete this thread and then that's it. Okay, thank your partner in whatever way you want. Maybe just with silence, the waterway. And then let's come back together. And so we can proceed in one of two ways. I don't know that we have time to do both of these things. So we can either, with the remainder of the class time, we can kind of harvest what we just experienced and observed and share some of those things with the group and engage with that. Or we can do a different thing, different exercise, which is like a walking of the 5 elements, where someone from the class will come up and we're gonna do a exercise like that, where you're gonna if we don't do this class, we can do it in a future class. But anyway, my first inclination was to actually just harvest what we just experienced, but both are exciting. The second one was doing another exercise, but it's going to be one person coming up and kind of learning more about how each of the 5 elements flow within your life with respect to one person in your life.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of just have to do the inner harvesting then on that exercise, and we won't talk about it as a class. So basically, I'll just introduce this exercise first. So call this like walking the 5 elements. And so one person, hopefully, will get a volunteer to come up, and I'm going to facilitate the exercise. And we're going to go through, you're going to hold one person in mind that you're in life with. Could be a partner, could be a child, parent, sibling, friend, anyone that you're in life with. And then we're going to go through the 5. We're going to start with water. And then we're going to go through how that element shows up within your relationship with that person. We're going to look at it through the lens of the gift of that. This is kind of how we're going to start, because each of these elements offer a gift or a way of being present with another person. So the water element being associated with deep listening, deep presence, deep listening without judgment, receptivity. The wood element being associated with new possibility or collaboration, planning, envisioning new things. Fire element being associated with partnership and spontaneity, having fun. Earth element being associated with like taking care of or being taken care of, taking care and being taken care of, and associated with like support, being supportive, associated with touch, physical touch. And the metal element gift being acknowledgement. The metal element is about extracting the gem and, you know, taking the good part, getting rid of the bad part, extracting the gem and then offering that to someone in terms of acknowledgement. Metal can also show up as kind of like a holding of sacred space. So is there anyone who wants to come up and listen? Cool. Okay.
Where do you want?
You can go right here. And so, okay, so we have this 5-element chart. 5 elements that we can kind of just lay on the ground to just sort of symbolize. So you're going to walk around this. So we're going to start on this side, which is water, the blue. Yeah. And
Is it
so,
okay if I'm down?
yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. And so tell me who you're thinking of. First name. You don't have
Megan.
Megan. Okay. Okay. And so we're holding Megan in the circle and we're starting within the water. So with Megan, are you able to be with her in stillness, in silence, in deep listening? How does that show up?
Can I say who she is?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
This is my sister.
Okay.
And yes, I can be with her in stillness. She holds beautiful space for that. And she's a great listener. It's more of how she is with me. Right?
It can be both. It can be both. We're kind of like focus on how you, because we can really, in changing our relationship with someone, we can really kind of like alter our own behavior. We can't necessarily alter their behavior. We can through our own presence, but what we're going to be kind of focusing on is how we show up to them. So like kind of feeling like, and if we can kind of realize where maybe we want to show up differently or areas for growth in that relationship with the person, because with any relationship, we want to be able to move fluidly and be in all of these. If we're not able to be in one place, it's an opportunity for deeper connection and for growth and for fluidity in that relationship. So yeah, what are the ways that like you feel like you're able to kind of be in that space of being in stillness, being in the unknown, being in listening with Megan?
Well, we're not like physically together very often. So it's a lot of what I'm interpreting like deep listening more than like physical stillness. Would that apply? And I feel like
deep listening without judgment.
Yeah, we're kind of each other's confidants and we tell each other everything. And so I feel like we balance that for each other, and we both we're like our sounding boards to each other, you know. And there are times and like phases in life where we're disconnected at times and don't talk as much, but we always kind of come back and pick up where we left off. So I feel like we do that for each other. Is it going to be disappointing if we're balanced?
No, that'd be great. No, we can move. We can go. If you go really fast, that's fine. Yeah. And so, okay, so now let's move to wood. The green. We'll go this way. Yeah, so we'll go clockwise. Okay, so the wood element is about new possibility. It's about collaboration. It's about envisioning. It's about creating new stuff. Yeah.
My sister and I are both dreamers, so that's why I laughed, because we definitely were just like, okay, where are we gonna buy land? This is what we're gonna do. It's gotta have hot springs. It's gotta have water, or like other things, or business ideas, and we give each other ideas and are supportive in that way. So the creative energy is definitely there for both of us.
Awesome.
And like, yeah, supporting each other.
Awesome.
Does that apply?
Yes, let's move on.
Just kidding.
Bye.
Okay, I'll listen to you. Okay.
Okay, so what are the ways that you're in partnership with Megan in terms of being in the flow of life, being spontaneous, having fun, enjoying the lightness of being?
I feel like we do that from time to time, but there is like we're both, I don't know, I'm bringing in astrology, but we're both like very deep water signs. So I can see how we can like weigh each other down sometimes and just like get into topics that are not light and spontaneous. But that said, like I just met her in Moab this weekend on a whim, and like that was fun.
Yeah, the sun
so-
and the desert can help to bring out the fire element.
Yeah. So we do that sometimes, but I can see how we can also do the opposite.
So maybe it's not as natural or as common to have this shared space based
Yeah.
on where you guys meet,
Yes.
but it's something that you can do and that you enjoy to do.
Mhm.
Something you want more of, or you feel
I feel like, yeah, we have room to be more spontaneous and lighthearted. Definitely. Yeah. We can be downers together.
okay. So one thing is out of this, you don't have to tell us now, but you can think of one thing you can do to offer this gift of spontaneity to her.
Yeah, I feel like it's something I've been embracing more in my
Mm.
life. So maybe just being more aware of that and sharing it with her, because I feel like it would be helpful and breed like more connection between us.
So yeah, I'll just ask you now, what's one way that you can offer this gift of spontaneity? One thing that you can do with her.
I could just show up at her house. She would
Yeah,
love that.
awesome.
She lives in Salt Lake. I could spontaneously surprise her with something.
Awesome. I love that.
Just something little, that feels easy. And then someday I'll spontaneously like buy her a trip to Europe. We'll start small.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah.
Does that work?
Yes, that works. That's awesome.
Okay, that's something I'll think about. Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one. More doable.
You also send her like a random message.
Yeah. That's underneath.
Yeah, just
Okay, that's
baby,
like
baby.
uninterpretable. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. She might appreciate that. I'm gonna do these things.
So the earth element, or maybe it's the earth element. So what are the ways that you are able to take care of Megan, to like either hold her with touch, or just like, kind of emotional holding of like, not so much holding space, the sacred space of metal, but actually holding like physical space and showing that level of care, taking care of her.
I feel like this is definitely out of balance between us in the way that she's a massage therapist and she is a nurturer, and she's my older sister and she's like the mother, energy to me, and she's always taking care of me. And so she like just last month or a couple months ago, I was having a really hard time, and she showed up and like massaged and did energy work and was just there physically for me. And I was sad thinking about it now that I don't feel like I do that for her as much.
You're not practiced
And
at that.
yeah,
with
it's
her.
not like obviously it's her trade and it's like her way that she gives love. I'm so emotional when time goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a way that it feels imbalanced, where I could reciprocate more physically with her. Like, and I mean, just this, when I was with her on our spontaneous trip, I rubbed her feet, and I'd never done that before. And so I feel like I'm maybe becoming more aware of that physical touch piece and holding physical space. So, but it is a little bit imbalanced and something I can work on.
So what's one thing that comes to mind of a kind of a gift that you can offer her out of this space?
I feel like just kind of like what I did for her in Moab, just casually, spontaneously showing up at her house, casually rubbing her feet.
Okay.
Maybe
So foot
making
rub.
her food with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Tea or something to nourish her physical body.
Yes. Okay, so you're gonna bring her food and give her a foot rub. It's good to be specific, right? You can obviously change it, but
Yeah,
yeah.
we
Okay.
should do this exercise for like a Valentine's,
Uh-huh.
around Valentine's
Uh-huh.
Day. No,
Totally.
right before.
Yeah.
Like give
Try to
purpose
incorporate
activities.
all of them into, yeah. Or just what's showing up is missing.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So let's move to metal. So the gift of metal is acknowledgement. So how does that show up with Megan in terms of like being able to be deeply present and offer her acknowledgement for something about her, what you see in her, what you get out of your relationship from her, or kind of giving that deep acknowledgement of her worth and her worth for
Yeah.
being.
I feel like that's one way that I'm good at that with her, like in our conversations, where we are kind of each other's cheerleader, and like I feel like in the ways that I might lack in the earth element, I'm good at telling her how great she is, and like you know, being a support when things feel hard, and honoring her choices and who she is as a person. And it's all like a lot of big verbal things that come from. And I do also feel like that's mirrored back to me as well.
Awesome. And the metal element is also about kind of like being able to hold sort of like sacred space with the person and like see the nature of them and then verbalize the nature of them.
Yeah, I do feel like we do that for each other.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So you have two things you can practice. I have a list of I can write, and we're gonna try to do this like every week. So we can, this is where we'll end classes. We can look at the gifts. The interpersonal gifts of the 5 elements. I don't know, I worded it here. Okay. So those are the gifts. So we have all of these abilities and gifts within us. So we can just practice. There's some of them that come naturally based on our nature. Some of them might come really naturally to us. Other ones are a little more awkward at first, or maybe awkward with that particular person. You're not practiced at that with that person. That's how we can say it. You know, so versus like, oh, I'm not good at being spontaneous. It's like you're not practiced at being spontaneous with that person, just the practice. So you can offer that gift to that person, people. So this is something to think about over weeks, months, years.
Can you only offer those gifts if you embody them yourself?
I mean, yes, but we do embody all of them within ourselves. We do have all of these. Some maybe like, need some tending, but it's like the kind of that like conflict of like, oh, I need to like love myself before I can love others. Not necessarily. Like, you can do this. Actually doing this is cultivating that virtue within yourself. So it's not like you need to like, work on yourself and then go out. You actually work on yourself by offering these gifts. And it might feel off. One of these or multiple of these may feel like kind of awkward at first, or unnatural, or different, or weird. But you can just be very intentional and offer it, and offering it regardless of expectation of how it will be received. Like maybe you're like show up at your sister's and like you're like, hey, like come with me, let's go camping. She's like, I don't want to go camping, right? So like it's like irrespective of how it's received. It might, it may fall flat in that moment. You can try again, you can try a different way. It's not like a one and done thing, right? It's like a practice. And so you kind of can practice different ways of being spontaneous, find the way that resonates or resonates at a different time. Right. And then you can also, in any relationship, you can look at, okay, what's showing up as missing in this relationship? So you can kind of go through each of the 5 phases. And, do we feel like things are moving? Like, are we envisioning new possibilities? Are things dynamic? Are things moving? Right. Am I offering deep listening? Stillness? Am I being spontaneous and fun? Do we have fun, spontaneous experiences together? Am I, showing up and like taking care of this person, supporting them and feeding them and nourishing them? Am I offering acknowledgement to this person? Am I holding sacred space for them? Am I seeing the sacredness within them and verbalizing that? So that's that.
I also like the idea of just like taking inventory of like my own relationship to these things with myself.
So am I deep listening to myself? Am I doing?
Yeah. And just like, what is my relationship to spontaneity?
Right. Yeah, we can do it within ourselves as well. And we can also, like, if we, look at enough other relationships, we can maybe start to see patterns. Like, is there one that I'm kind of defaulting to, that I'm always going to this, but maybe that's not the quote unquote love language of the other person. But in reality, these are all love languages of everyone, but there just may be some that are more comfortable or more go-to or more familiar. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I liked the experiences.
Yeah, it was fun to be there.
And I'm gonna be doing all weekend.
You're just gonna be sitting here.